Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. So today we're taking on a cult classic, the sci-fi film Starship
Oh,
Troopers.
yeah. The one with all the giant bugs
Oh.
and those crazy space battles. Just a fun, action-packed movie, right?
Well, that's what it looks like on the surface, but
Yeah.
we're going to dig a bit deeper.
Okay.
We found this really interesting episode of a podcast called Retro Rewind. They make a pretty compelling case that Starship Troopers is actually a
A
satire.
satire, really.
Yeah, they argue that it's satirizing militarism and propaganda. It kind of makes you look at the film in a whole new light.
Interesting. I'm intrigued.
Have you ever seen a movie that seemed like pure entertainment?
Of course, tons.
But then, after it was over, you found yourself thinking about some of the deeper issues it raised.
Oh, yeah, I get that. Like it sneaks up on you.
That's exactly what we're going to explore with Starship Troopers today. So, to start, let's acknowledge the obvious, right?
Right.
It's a sci-fi action film. Humanity versus these giant alien bugs called arachnids.
Right. Classic good versus evil.
Exactly. But Retro Rewind points out there's a lot more going on beneath the surface. They argue that director Paul Verhoeven is actually using the film to critique things like militarism and fascism.
Wow. Okay. I never would have thought of that watching it.
And blind patriotism, too. One of the things they highlighted was this futuristic society, where military service is basically a requirement for full citizenship.
Interesting. So they're making it seem like this utopian ideal, like you serve your time and then you earn your place in society.
Exactly. But Retro Rewind suggests that there's a pretty sharp irony at play.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially if you're looking at it as satire,
Yeah.
which uses humor, right?
Right. An exaggeration to point out flaws in a system or the hypocrisy of it.
Exactly. So, like, are those recruitment ads in the film? Are those part of the satire?
The ones that are so over the top.
Yeah. They're almost like those old school propaganda campaigns.
That Retro Rewind thought so. And they made me think about it. They make you question this idea that military service is the only path to true citizenship, which the film is presenting as a good thing.
It's like they're playing with those expectations, flipping the script on us.
And it's not just the recruitment ads. What about those news broadcasts in the film?
Oh my gosh, yes. So dramatic,
They
right?
feel very familiar, even though they're set in the future, and very biased.
Totally. It makes you wonder about, like, the role of the media.
Especially during conflicts, how media shapes our perceptions.
Yeah, Retro Rewind talked about that too, like how media can be used to manipulate public opinion, which we see in the film.
You know how the news glorifies war and dehumanizes the enemy? They create this us versus them mentality to keep the conflict going.
Which is a little unnerving, right? Considering what we see in the world today.
It really is. Makes you think. It's like the film is a cautionary tale, reminding us to be critical of what we see and hear, especially the messages we are bombarded with constantly.
Absolutely. Be critical thinkers, folks. Don't just accept everything at face value.
Now, Retro Rewind also pointed out the performances in the film and how they contribute to that satirical tone. They said the actors do a great job of mixing that seriousness with this almost cheesy delivery.
Oh, yeah, that's a tough balance to strike. Like, you have to wink at the audience without being too over the top.
Right. And then they highlighted Casper Van Dien. He plays Johnny Rico, the main character.
Oh, I remember him. Starts out as this bright-eyed, eager recruit ready to save the world.
Yeah, but then over time, he becomes so disillusioned by the realities of war. It's like a classic coming-of-age story, but set against this backdrop of interstellar war.
That makes his journey even more compelling. Seeing him grapple with those big questions, those harsh truths,
It definitely makes you think about the cost of conflict, right? On both a personal level.
and a societal level, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, what are we willing to sacrifice? And for what?
Exactly.
Mm.
And speaking of sacrifices, can we talk about the bugs, the stars of the show, visually at least?
Oh, yeah. Terrifying creatures, those arachnids. They really creep me out.
Retro Rewind discussed how effective they are as both literal and metaphorical representations of the enemy. They're not just mindless monsters.
Right. They're organized. They have a strategy. They have different types of warriors for different purposes.
They have a hive mind.
Oh, yeah. And a leader.
The infamous brain bug.
Oof. Don't even get me started on that thing.
It adds a whole other level of horror, doesn't it? That idea of this creature that can extract information from human brains.
It's like war isn't just about physical combat, but psychological warfare, too.
Absolutely. And we have to give credit to those special effects. I mean, Retro Rewind was gushing over them.
They do hold up remarkably well.
The team that worked on Starship Troopers also worked on classics like Star Wars and Jurassic Park.
Oh, no wonder those bugs look so real. Even today, they're terrifying. You really get a sense of the danger and the scale of this conflict.
Before we move on, I have some trivia from Retro Rewind I thought you might enjoy.
Oh, I love trivia. Hit me.
So, Casper Van Dien, who plays Johnny Rico, the ultimate soldier, had absolutely zero military experience before filming.
Wow, really? That's wild. Talk about immersing yourself in a role. He really had to do his homework for that one.
Right. And here's another one. When Starship Troopers was first released, it wasn't exactly a hit with the critics. Some even missed the whole satire aspect completely.
You're kidding. They just thought it was another mindless action flick.
Pretty much. Retro Rewind said it was like the critics got distracted by all the spectacle, the bug guts and explosions, and they just didn't see the deeper message.
It makes you wonder, how much do our expectations, going into a film, shape how we see it? Or even whether we see it for what it truly is.
Totally. And that's what's so interesting about Starship Troopers. It's gained this huge cult following over time. People have started to see it for what it really is.
A smart film that uses satire to make us think about some serious stuff, like militarism, propaganda, and blind patriotism.
Exactly. And that's just scratching the surface.
There's so much more to unpack. Welcome back. Let's jump right back into Starship Troopers.
Okay, so we were talking about satire and how the film uses those propaganda elements, like the recruitment videos.
Right. And those news broadcasts, they're so over the top.
Yeah, but that's what makes them so effective. It's like they're hitting you over the head with the message.
Exactly. And they're making a point about how easily, we can be swayed.
By persuasive messaging, whether it's true or not.
Right. And one scene, perfectly captures this, I think.
Oh, yeah. Which one?
Shower scene. Remember that one?
The one with the Johnny and the other recruits?
Yeah. On the surface, it might seem like just gratuitous,
A little gratuitous, maybe. But then when you think about it in the context of everything else that's going on.
It takes on a whole new meaning, right?
Yeah, it's intercut with footage of the battles and those cheerful recruitment ads. It's such a stark contrast.
Between the sanitized image of war.
And the brutal reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like the film is screaming at you, don't believe the hype. War is not some glamorous adventure.
No, it's definitely not. And the dialogue, too. When the drill instructor says...
Oh, yeah. He's like, the Obel Infantry made me the man I am today.
He says it with such conviction.
While there's blood and guts splattering everywhere.
Such dark humor.
But so brilliant.
It really makes you question everything you're seeing.
And hearing. And it's not just the big societal themes that are explored, right?
Yeah.
Individual character.
Oh, yeah. They have to deal with the effects of war, too.
Dizzy Flores. She was such an interesting character.
I really liked her. So strong and capable. You can tell she's not naive about the risks.
But she believes in the cause. Fighting for something bigger than herself.
She's a good counterpoint to Johnny.
Yeah, he starts out so idealistic, right?
And their relationship, it adds this other layer of complexity. That even amidst all the fighting and the horror...
There's still room for human connection.
And compassion.
Yeah.
That final scene.
Oh my gosh, so heartbreaking.
It really hits you hard. The cost of war on a personal level.
Even with all the action and satire, the film still manages to create these moments of real emotion.
Speaking of action, we got to talk about the bugs.
The arachnids. They are so much more than just monsters,
Right. They're intelligent, organized, like a real threat.
Yeah, they represent a truly alien force. The film does a great job of showcasing their different abilities.
So many different types of bugs. The tanker bug with its armor, the warrior bugs that are so fast.
It definitely keeps the action fresh.
And then the brain bug.
The name alone sends chills down my spine.
Yeah, it's disturbing.
It represents the enemy's strategic thinking. That they're not just relying on brute force.
Psychological warfare.
That's what it is. It makes you think about all the different ways conflicts can be waged.
Yeah.
Not just on the battlefield, but in people's minds.
So we've talked about the satire.
The characters.
The bugs.
And how Verhoeven, the director, blends all of those things to create this commentary on war and blind patriotism.
He really is a master storyteller.
He uses visuals, character development, those amazing special effects to deliver a multi-layered experience.
It's not a simple film, that's for sure.
It's entertaining, thought-provoking.
And even a little disturbing.
It really makes you think about the world, the systems we live in.
It's set in the future, but it feels so relevant today.
And that's what makes it so powerful, I think. It stays with you.
Speaking of retro rewind, talked about how the film has been interpreted in different ways.
Oh, right. Some people see it as a pro-military film, others as a critique of fascism.
So many different interpretations.
It makes you realize that there can be multiple truths, multiple perspectives.
So where do you stand? Do you think Starship Troopers is a pro-war film or an anti-war film?
That's the big question, isn't it? Maybe there's no easy answer.
Maybe it's both.
Maybe it's neither. The point is, it makes you think. It challenges your assumptions.
It forces you to confront your own beliefs.
And in a world where we're bombarded with information, that's more important than ever.
So as we move into the final part of our deep dive,
Let's explore Starship Troopers' legacy.
how has this film, set in a distant future, managed to stay relevant for so long? And we're back, wrapping up our Starship Troopers deep dive.
It's been quite a journey. We've covered a lot of ground, from the satire to the characters and, of course, those unforgettable bugs.
Yeah. Now, I think it's time to talk about the film's legacy. How's it held up over the years?
Right. It's interesting because it wasn't a huge hit when it was first released, right?
Yeah, Retro Rewind talked about that. Some critics really didn't get it.
Like, they missed the whole point.
They just thought it was another dumb action movie.
It makes you wonder, maybe audiences weren't ready for that kind of satire back then.
Or maybe those critics were just too distracted by all the explosions and bug guts.
Right. They missed the deeper layers. But over time, people have come to appreciate it.
Yeah. It's become a real cult classic. People recognize it as a smart film with a lot to say.
About society, about war, about how easily we can be manipulated.
And it's kind of scary how relevant it feels today, even though it's set in the future.
Right. Those themes of militarism and propaganda, it's like Verhoeven was looking into a crystal ball or something.
It's a reminder that satire can be so powerful.
It can hold up a mirror to society, show us our flaws.
And make us think, which is what good art should do, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It should challenge us, provoke us, make us question things.
And that's why Starship Troopers is still so important today. It reminds us to be critical thinkers, to not just accept everything we're told at face value.
To question the narratives that are presented to us, especially by the media.
So, to our listeners, what can you take away from all this? What have we learned from diving deep into Starship Troopers?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that even something that seems like just entertainment can have a really profound message.
Don't underestimate those popcorn flicks. They might surprise you.
Yeah. Look beyond the surface. Ask questions, engage in conversations.
Challenge the status quo. Think for yourselves.
Exactly. And remember, the best films, the ones that really stick with us, they're the ones that make us do all of those things.
They make us think, question, and engage with the world in a more meaningful way.
So keep exploring. Keep those conversations going.
And most importantly, keep diving deep. That's all for today, folks. Thanks for joining us.